So just yesterday, we discussed the incredible sales start that Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is off to, with some initial numbers coming in around the globe, specifically more from UK and even France posting up some numbers that this game's essentially breaking all records within 2023 in terms of total sales so far, and we are expecting this to be one of the best selling, if not the best selling Zelda game of all time, period. But with a storied franchise like The Legend of Zelda, which stems all the way back to the NES in 1986, there's clearly a lot of different fans of different eras of Zelda games. And one of the questions that formed following Breath of the Wild being such a massive success and received and praised so high by fans is, would this actually set the formula for future 3D Zelda iterations to come? Well, clearly we saw that with Tears of the Kingdom being a direct sequel, but there was still that looming question on whether or not Nintendo would take this open world approach with every mainline Zelda game that will be developed for the foreseeable future. And in today's video, we have to discuss just that, because there are some brand new interviews being published following all of the marketing and media hype interview sessions that are happening around Tears of the Kingdom, and we have some direct quotes from Aonuma himself around the entire future and what fans should be expecting from the Legend of Zelda games in a post Tears of the Kingdom world. What's up, nation? Make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification if you haven't already. And as mentioned, guys, today we are once again discussing Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, specifically more the future of the franchise from here, because you've seen a lot of history with a franchise that has been around as long as Legend of Zelda. Many would actually claim that the original Zelda 1986 release on the NES is kind of really close to what we're seeing the gameplay loop become with games like Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, in the sense that you can do anything in any order, and it did seem to be the initial goal, more or less, of the franchise, but maybe was held back technologically over the years. Although I would argue that you have fans from every era of Zelda game with A Link to the Past really forging the core formula for many years to come in terms of how you would progress through a Zelda game. And then we saw that evolve into 3D with Ocarina of Time, and that for sure set a precedent of what fans would expect when it comes to new mainline 3D AAA developed Zelda games. And sure enough, they've stuck to that formula pretty religiously up until Breath of the Wild. And when you look at the sales trajectory of many different entries within the Zelda franchise, you have a wide variety of different numbers. But historically, outside of a game like Ocarina of Time, that between its two different releases, mind you, with the original game on the N64 and then of course the remaster on the 3DS, it effectively hit around the 14 million mark all in. And then you have some smash hit successes like Twilight Princess that sits at 10 million between its two different releases, but nothing has ever cracked that 30+ million that we are seeing from a game like Zelda Breath of the Wild. And largely that attracted so many new users because of its open world approach and its ease of access to gameplay mechanics. We know just on the Switch alone, the game sits over 29 million currently, and if you factor in its Wii U release, it's well over 30 at this point, and there's no signs that it will just fall off a cliff and stop selling either. As the Nintendo Switch continues to build more and more of an audience, that's still one of the staple games that you would go pick up, especially if you're a brand new console owner and haven't played it. And there's probably some people playing through that before they play through Tears of the Kingdom, the direct sequel to that game. And so when you have a game that's such a smash hit success, you logically would expect Nintendo to maybe take that as a signal of this is what we should do with games going forward. And we definitely see that with Tears of the Kingdom. I mean, it takes place in the same Hyrule. It is just expanded in a big way in terms of the skies above and grounds beneath. But there's been that question in many gamers' heads, including my own. Will we still see a return to form in the sense of that Ocarina of Time style of mainline 3D Zelda game? Will it be developed supplementally alongside and be sold alongside of a open world experience? Or is open world really the direction we're going to go from here? And do we revisit this Hyrule again for potentially a third time? Something of a trilogy rounding out the Breath of the Wild, then Tears of the Kingdom Hyrule. Is that the direction we are headed? And to first get on the same page with exactly what Aonuma said in a recent interview, let's quickly hop over to Eurogamer and read through this detailed typed up article together. Open world Zelda is a format for the future of the series, says producer Aonuma. It could go on forever. Zelda series producer Aonuma has stated the Breath of the Wild style gameplay continued in Tears of the Kingdom. It is a new kind of format for the future of the series. In an interview with Game Informer, Aonuma was asked if the open world design would be the foundation for the next several games, just as Ocarina of Time previously established the 3D format. Aonuma agreed that Ocarina of Time did create a format, but it was ultimately restrictive for the designers, while Breath of the Wild offered a new type of play. With Ocarina of Time, I think it's correct to say that it did kind of create a format for a number of titles in the franchise that came after it. But in some ways, that was a little bit restricting for us. While we always aim to give the player freedom of certain kinds, there were certain things that format didn't really afford in giving people freedom, said Aonuma. Of course, the series continued to evolve after Ocarina of Time, but I think it's also fair to say now that we've arrived at Breath of the Wild and the new type of more open play and freedom that it affords, yeah, I think it's fair to say that it has created a new kind of format for the series to proceed from. So I think it's important to note within that interview, he is not stating that we will be returning to the same Hyrule every time, but he is very clearly stating that the general gameplay direction that Breath of the Wild has essentially spearheaded, with just the option to go anywhere in the world that you want to. You can go chase down all of the different map towers and shrine hunt before messing with any of the story, or you can dive directly into the story in any order that you want it to unfold, and that is the kind of general freedom of gameplay that they like to deliver to the players, and it sounds like that's going to be here to stay for the foreseeable future. The question still remains on whether or not we will see other Zelda teams develop different style of brand new experiences, or just lean into the plethora of ports and remasters that they could deliver from the series history. I do think that they will do something in addition to these massive open world direction Zelda games, because if you just look at the development time between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, granted there was a pandemic in there, it also used the same base Hyrule and a lot of the assets from Breath of the Wild, and it still took them over 6 years to pump out that sequel. With that in mind, and knowing the frequency of releases that Nintendo likes to lean on Zelda to sell additional units and even consoles, and they've stated themselves that they would like to have one release every year, it does beg the question of what's next, because they will definitely be able to lean on certain ports and remasters that aren't on modern consoles today for some length of time, but you would logically expect them to have to create something new. And if each new mainline 3D Zelda game is going to be open world for the foreseeable future, that's going to take a lot more development time, and I'm curious if we will see more games like A Link Between Worlds or your Phantom Hourglass Spirit Tracks type of games that would have been developed for a handheld console actually get some standalone focus for the Switch, and maybe between the rotating wheelhouse of new 2D / more traditional 3D style Zelda games being released, as well as leaning into some ports and remasters, they can continue to make this franchise flourish over the years to come and kind of deliver the best of both worlds experience for the player. Because I am absolutely in love with Tears of the Kingdom right now. I am thoroughly happy with this game so far. I do feel like any of my complaints that I had with Breath of the Wild, for the most part, have been addressed so far in this sequel. However, there is still a different type of enjoyment and a different type of feeling that I get when I boot up something like an Ocarina of Time or a Twilight Princess or a Wind Waker. I think that there is a market for both types of games out there, and I hope that the Zelda team actually recognizes that and continues to deliver us great experiences on both formats of games. But while we don't know what will happen for the more traditional style Zelda games from here, it is very clear that this open world format is here to stay for the long term of 3D Zelda games to come, and we're likely another 5 to 6 years out minimum from the next mainline installment, although I'm sure we'll get some Tears of the Kingdom DLC along the way. But I really want to hear from you guys at this point in the video, all your personal thoughts and opinions around these statements from Mr. Aonuma himself. Do you think that this is a good direction for the series to go? and you were very excited to hear that open world is here to stay. And would you actually want a third game to take place in this same Hyrule, or do you think by the time the next installment is being worked on, it does need to be something new from the ground up in terms of the world that they create? And also let me know whether or not you prefer the Breath of the Wild Tears of the Kingdom style gameplay and the open world exploration, or if you're still more of a fan of the traditional 3D. I'm kind of split on the two. I enjoy that Ocarina of Time style progression at a deep level, but I also find myself enjoying this open world, and I feel like they are kind of a different experience, not necessarily that one is better than the other. But I know there's a lot of different strong opinions online around that topic, so I would love to hear your take on it. And lastly, let me know what you hope we see next from the franchise, whether it be ports and remasters that aren't easily playable right now, or if you'd like to see some kind of brand new, from the ground up, more traditional Zelda game developed and released on the platform. So regardless of your thoughts and feelings on everything we talked about today, I do look forward to hearing from you all in the comments down below before we leave the video, as I do look forward to getting a back and forth conversation started with you all around this topic. Go watch yesterday's video next if you haven't already, which is on screen right now. Also make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.